The sands of time hold many stories, tales of bravery, legends of betrayal. The desert, with its vast and unforgiving expanse, has witnessed countless events that have shaped the course of history. It is a place where the past and present collide, where the echoes of ancient voices can still be heard whispering through the winds. Among these stories, one stands out for its dramatic and cautionary nature. The story of Korah's rebellion is one such tale. It is a narrative that has been passed down through generations, a story that has been told and retold, each time with a sense of awe and reverence. This tale is not just a story of rebellion, it is a story of ambition, power, and the consequences of challenging the divine order. A story of defiance against leadership. Korah, a man of considerable influence and standing, dared to question the authority of Moses and Aaron. His defiance was not just a personal vendetta, it was a challenge to the very structure of the society in which he lived. Korah's actions were a bold statement, a declaration that he believed he was just as capable, if not more so, of leading the people. A stark reminder of the consequences of challenging divine authority. The repercussions of Korah's rebellion were swift and severe. The ground itself opened up to swallow the dissenters, a dramatic and terrifying display of divine power. This event served as a powerful reminder to all who witnessed it of the dangers of overstepping one's bounds and challenging the established order. Our story unfolds in the Book of Numbers. This ancient text, a cornerstone of religious tradition, provides a detailed account of the events that transpired. It is within these pages that we find the story of Korah, a tale that has been preserved for millennia as a lesson for future generations. We are introduced to Korah. A Levite by birth, Korah was a man of significant influence within his community. He was not just an ordinary man. He was someone who held a position of respect and authority. His actions, therefore, carried considerable weight and had far-reaching implications. A Levite, a man of influence. Korah's status as a Levite meant that he was part of a privileged group within the society. The Levites were responsible for religious duties and held a special place in the community. Korah's rebellion was not just a personal act of defiance, it was a challenge to the very fabric of the society. He was joined by Dathan and Abiram, leaders from the tribe of Reuben. These men, like Korah, were influential figures within their tribe. Their decision to join Korah in his rebellion added weight to the movement and signaled a significant challenge to the established order. On, also from the tribe of Reuben, joined them, adding his voice to their growing discontent. The dissatisfaction was not limited to a few individuals. It was a sentiment that was spreading through the ranks. The rebellion was gaining momentum, and the leaders were becoming increasingly vocal in their opposition. These men became the face of rebellion. Their actions and words resonated with many, and they quickly became the symbols of defiance against the established order. Their faces were known throughout the camp, and their message was clear. They were not willing to accept the status quo. Their whispers of dissent spread through the camp. The seeds of rebellion were sown, and the discontent began to grow. The whispers turned into murmurs, and the murmurs into open defiance. The camp was abuzz with talk of rebellion, and the tension was palpable. These men, though prominent, failed to grasp the weight of their actions. They were blinded by their ambition and their desire for power. They did not fully understand the consequences of their defiance, nor did they appreciate the gravity of the situation they were creating. They underestimated the power they challenged. The divine authority that they sought to overthrow was not something to be taken lightly. Their actions were not just a challenge to human leadership, they were a challenge to the divine order itself. They sought to usurp the authority bestowed upon Moses and Aaron. This was not just a political move, it was a spiritual rebellion. Moses and Aaron were chosen by divine mandate, and challenging their authority was akin to challenging the divine will. Their ambition blinded them to the consequences that awaited. The desire for power and influence can often cloud judgment, and in the case of Korah and his followers, it led them down a path of destruction. They were so focused on their goal that they failed to see the danger that lay ahead. This is a tale as old as time. The story of Korah's rebellion is a timeless narrative that has been told and retold throughout the ages. It serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of ambition and the importance of respecting the established order. A cautionary reminder for all who dare to challenge the established order. The story of Korah is not just a historical account, it is a lesson for all generations. It reminds us of the importance of humility, respect for authority, and the dangers of unchecked ambition. It is a story that continues to resonate even in our modern world, as a powerful warning against the perils of defiance and the consequences of challenging the divine order. The Israelites, newly freed from slavery, wandered the desert. Their journey, though a path to freedom, was not an easy one. The harsh desert environment tested their endurance and faith. Each day brought new challenges, from the scorching sun to the scarcity of food and water. The once hopeful and jubilant cries of liberation began to fade, replaced by murmurs of discontent and doubt. Their journey was fraught with hardship. The relentless heat and barren landscape seemed to stretch endlessly before them. The people grew weary, their bodies and spirits worn down by the unyielding conditions. The promise of a land flowing with milk and honey seemed like a distant dream, almost unattainable. Doubts gnawed at their resolve. Questions began to surface in their minds. Had they truly been led to freedom, or had they exchanged one form of suffering for another? The uncertainty of their future weighed heavily on them, and whispers of discontent began to spread among the ranks. Korah and his followers seized this moment of vulnerability. Sensing the growing unrest, they saw an opportunity to challenge the established order. Korah, a man of ambition and persuasive speech, began to sow seeds of doubt and rebellion. He spoke to the people's fears and frustrations, presenting himself as a voice of reason and an alternative to the current leadership. They fanned the flames of discontent. Korah and his followers skillfully manipulated the people's emotions, turning their grievances into a rallying cry. They painted a picture of a brighter future under their leadership, one where the people's needs and desires would be met. Their grievances, at first glance, seemed legitimate. They questioned Moses' leadership. Why should one man hold so much power? Why should they follow him blindly through the desert? These were questions that resonated with many, especially those who felt overlooked or marginalized. They challenged Aaron's role as high priest. Korah argued that the priesthood should not be the exclusive domain of Aaron and his descendants. He claimed that all the congregation was holy, and that the Lord was among them. This challenge to the established religious order struck a chord with those who felt excluded from the inner circle of power. They claimed their own lineage gave them equal right to leadership. Korah and his followers asserted that their heritage and lineage were just as noble and worthy as that of Moses and Aaron. They believed that leadership should be more inclusive and representative of the entire community. They accused Moses of leading them astray. The hardships of the journey were used as evidence against him. They argued that Moses had led them out of Egypt, only to bring them to a place of suffering and uncertainty. The promise of a better life seemed like a cruel joke in the face of their current reality, of claiming a higher position for himself. Korah suggested that Moses had elevated himself above the rest of the community, using his position to wield power and control. This accusation struck a nerve with those who felt oppressed and unheard.
These accusations resonated with some. The seeds of doubt and rebellion found fertile ground in the hearts of those who were already disillusioned. The idea of a new leadership, one that promised to be more inclusive and attentive to their needs, was appealing. The Israelites were tired, hungry, and afraid. The constant struggle for survival in the desert had taken its toll. Their physical and emotional exhaustion made them more susceptible to Korah's rhetoric. They were desperate for a change, for a leader who would lead them to a place of safety and abundance. They longed for a return to normalcy. The memories of their lives in Egypt, despite the hardships of slavery, began to seem more appealing in comparison to their current plight. The promise of stability and predictability was a powerful lure. Korah's words offered them a scapegoat. He provided a clear target for their frustrations and anger. By blaming Moses and Aaron, the people found a way to channel their discontent and make sense of their suffering. Someone to blame for their suffering. The idea that their hardships were the result of poor leadership rather than the inherent difficulties of their journey was a comforting thought. It gave them a sense of control and agency, even if it was based on a false premise. The seeds of rebellion, once sown, quickly took root. The discontent spread like wildfire through the camp. What began as a few voices of dissent soon grew into a full-blown rebellion. The unity and purpose that had once driven the Israelites forward were now threatened by division and strife.
Word of the growing dissent reached Moses. The whispers of discontent had been growing louder, spreading like wildfire among the Israelites. The people, weary from their long journey and the hardships they faced, began to question Moses' leadership. They wondered if the Promised Land was a mere illusion, a distant dream that would never come to fruition. The seeds of rebellion were sown, and it wasn't long before they took root. A man known for his wisdom and patience, Moses had always been a pillar of strength for his people. He had led them out of Egypt, through the treacherous wilderness, and had been their guiding light. But now, even his unwavering faith was being tested. The burden of leadership weighed heavily on his shoulders, and the news of dissent only added to his troubles. He was chosen by God, a divine appointment that came with immense responsibility. Moses had always believed in his mission, trusting that God had a plan for him and his people. But the rebellion threatened to undermine everything he had worked for. It wasn't just a challenge to his authority, it was a challenge to God's will. Tasked with leading the Israelites to the Promised Land, Moses had faced numerous obstacles. Each step of the journey had been fraught with danger and uncertainty, yet he had persevered, driven by his faith and his commitment to his people. Now, as he led them with a heavy heart, he couldn't help but feel the weight of their discontent. He was deeply troubled by this challenge to his authority. It wasn't just about his leadership, it was about the very foundation of their faith. The rebellion was a direct affront to God's plan, and Moses knew that it could have devastating consequences. He feared for his people, knowing that their actions could lead them astray, not for himself, but for what it represented: a rebellion against God. Moses understood that this was more than just a power struggle. It was a spiritual crisis. The Israelites were losing sight of their divine purpose, and Moses felt a deep sense of responsibility to guide them back to the right path.
Moses, ever humble, fell to the ground. He prayed for guidance. In his moments of solitude, he sought solace in prayer, asking God for the strength and wisdom to navigate this crisis. He knew that he couldn't do it alone. He needed divine intervention to restore order and faith among his people. He sought a peaceful resolution. Moses believed in the power of dialogue and understanding. He hoped that, through prayer and reflection, he could find a way to resolve the conflict without further division. His heart yearned for peace, for a return to unity and purpose. He pleaded with Korah and his followers. Moses approached them with a heavy heart, hoping to appeal to their sense of reason and faith. He reminded them of the journey they had undertaken together, the miracles they had witnessed, and the divine guidance that had led them this far. He reminded them of God's selection. Moses spoke of the divine plan, of the sacred covenant that bound them to their mission. He urged them to remember their faith, to trust in God's wisdom, and to abandon their rebellious ways. He appealed to their sense of reason. Moses knew that the path to resolution lay in understanding and compassion. He tried to bridge the gap between them, to find common ground that could heal the rift. His words were filled with sincerity and hope, a testament to his unwavering faith. He warned them of the consequences of their actions. Moses spoke of the dangers that lay ahead if they continued on their path of rebellion. He painted a vivid picture of the potential fallout, hoping to instill a sense of urgency and caution in their hearts.
His words, however, fell on deaf ears. Despite his heartfelt pleas, Korah and his followers remained unmoved. Their hearts were hardened, their minds set on their course. The seeds of ambition and discontent had taken deep root, and they were unwilling to listen. Korah and his followers were too far gone, blinded by their ambition. They saw Moses not as a leader chosen by God, but as an obstacle to their own aspirations. Their desire for power and control overshadowed their faith and loyalty. Consumed by their thirst for power, they refused to listen. The allure of authority and influence had clouded their judgment, leading them down a path of defiance and rebellion. Moses' words, filled with wisdom and compassion, were lost on them. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown. The tension in the air was palpable, a sense of impending conflict that loomed over the camp. Both sides were entrenched in their positions, and it was clear that a resolution would not come easily. A confrontation that would determine the fate of the rebellion. The stakes were high, and the outcome of this clash would have far-reaching implications. It was a moment of reckoning, a test of faith and leadership that would shape the future of the Israelites and serve as a lesson for generations to come. The story of Moses and the rebellion of Korah would be remembered as a pivotal moment in the history of the Israelites. It was a tale of faith, leadership, and the consequences of defiance, a lesson that would resonate through the ages.